Hello, my wonderful human beings. Today we are going to learn about the Silk Road by taking notes. Then we will display our new knowledge by writing a paragraph following the racist strategy. Ooh, ah, oh. So here, my wonderful human beings, we can see a map, a diagram of the ancient Silk Road. It started in Dunhuang, China, went all the way through China. There were a couple routes, north and south. And in a couple days, we'll talk about the different routes and why people took them. Hint, bandits, the northern route was not as safe. The southern route was harder, but a lot safer. Through the Indian subcontinent, up through the Middle East, into it ended in Antioch, Turkey, and then went up in through Europe, and the official end was in Rome. Let's go a little bit more in depth and talk a little bit more about it. So the Silk Road was not a road made of silk. I know. So why do they call it the Silk Road? We'll find out. It was a collection of trade routes between China and Europe. It was over 4,000 miles long. Now, my wonderful human beings, as you are following along with this presentation, you have your paper from class and you are writing your notes. You are filling in the blanks, right? Okay. Let's get it into our headspace. So, 4,000 miles long. I have no idea how long that is. So let's look at something we actually know. From St. Agatha, Maine, which is the furthest point away in Maine, all the way down to LA, which is almost the furthest point away. Like, that's a long, long way. Take a wild guess how many miles you think it is. 3,196 miles. That is a crazy long distance. Okay, so we know how long that is, like the length of it. Take a wild guess how many hours it would take to drive nonstop. Pretend like you don't have to stop to eat. Pretend like you don't have to stop to sleep. You don't have to stop to even get gas. If you're driving nonstop, 3,196.3 miles, how long do you think it would take? 47 hours. That's crazy pants. Now, if you're doing it normally and you're stopping to take potty breaks and to eat and to, sleep, then it takes about a week. And that's driving. Could you imagine how long it took to get from Dunhuang, China, all the way across the deserts, through the Middle East, and then onto a boat through the Mediterranean to Rome? Take a wild guess how long that took. Not even close. It would take over 2 years. That's crazy pants. Here's how they traveled. With caravans. They were on horses or donkeys. They would use camels to carry their stuff. Sometimes they would ride the camels, but they were usually used as pack animals. And the majority of the time they were walking. It was mostly traveled by merchants, people of the Shang class. There is no record of any one person making the entire journey because it was 2 years all the way there and then 2 years all the way back. It just wasn't done. Most people would travel only certain parts of it. They would take their goods, they would export them. Hey, looking at that vocabulary. They would export them, sell them, and then they would return home with the money that they made. Go collect more goods, export the new set of goods, and return home. We have absolutely no record of anyone making the entire journey even once, much less multiple times. Let's talk about the plague. Diseases were also spread along the convenient trade route. The Black Death that devastated Europe in the 14th century came from fleas via the Silk Road from Central Asia. So fleas would jump on the backs of rats, which is why when we see rats, we think of the plague. They would jump on the backs of rats, and rats would follow the caravans because people had food in the caravans, right? And rats would eat the food. They would jump on the ships in the Mediterranean because there was food, and rats would follow the food. So when we say that the Black Death devastated Europe, friends, we're not kidding. The Black Death is estimated to have killed roughly 100 million people in and around the year 1400. In just the span of a few years, the population of Europe, the entire continent of Europe, went from 450,000 down to 350,000 people. Million, not 350 million from 450 million. It killed 100 million people. Y'all, that is crazy pants. If there were 4 people, if there were 5 people, one of them would have ended up dead. That's insane. Let's talk about technology. We got a whole bunch of technology to talk about. This is the coolest part of the things that migrated along the Silk Road. So, you asked, why is it called the Silk Road if it's not a road made of silk? Because the thing that was the most prevalent along the Silk Road, at least as we know it now, was silk. Silk was created in China in 2500 BCE. Silk is beautiful fabric made from silkworms' cocoons. It was traded to Europe in the 1200s, and it went from east to west. And here we have an image of Chinese women making silk. Wow. We'll talk more about the production of silk. Gunpowder. Gunpowder was accidentally invented in the 1800s. First, it was used for fireworks. And then people realized, we could use this in warfare. It took them 200 years to realize that. And then it only stayed a secret for about 100 years because gunpowder was traded to Europe in the early 1100s. And that trade was from east to west. Paper was also traded along the Silk Road. It was invented in China in 104 CE and was traded to Europe in the 700s. Again, paper went from east to west. Do you notice how everything that is created in China goes from east to west? And let's talk about tea. Tea was invented in China almost 5,000 years ago when leaves fell into boiling water. Now, they didn't have tea bags like we know today. To easily transport this tea, the leaves were compressed into a brick, and then that brick was broken apart and steeped in water. Again, the trade was traded from east to west. Well, not everything went from east to west. Not only did they export, did they sell their goods to another country, they also imported. They bought goods from another country. Remember, export goes away, import comes in. X, in. Yes? Okay. One of the things that the Chinese imported was Roman glass. Roman glass was prized in China because of its rare colors. It could be made into intricate designs, and it was traded from Europe in the 400s. This went from west to east. Now, they had glass in China. Glass is what happens when someone has sand and heat. However, they didn't have the technology to be able to make designs like this awesome bird you see, or this vase with a face, or these colors like blue and green and purple. The Chinese didn't know how to put that into glass. The Romans did. So the Romans exported and the Chinese imported. We also had olive oil coming from Rome. Mediterranean civilizations traded olive oil long before the Silk Road existed. Olive oil was popular in ancient Egypt, and it was used across the continent for food and for religious ceremonies. Olive oil went from west to east. And here's how people made olive oil. We'll talk a lot more about olive oil when we get to Rome. Horses. Oh, what was it called when people would train plants and animals to make their lives easier? Domestication. Good vocabulary. So Western horses were larger and stronger and faster than horses that were found in China. Trade for horses spurred the beginning of the trade along the Silk Road. Now these horses went from west to east. Why don't we call it the horse road if the trade for horses is what started this whole thing? One of life's mysteries. Also imported was cotton. While silk was exported from China, they imported cotton from India. Buddhists preferred cotton because it came from a plant rather than an animal. We'll learn more about Buddhism, but it's the idea that you do no harm to anyone just because that's the right thing to do. And since silk came from silkworms, they thought that that could possibly be hurting the animals. And so they liked cotton because cotton grew from plants and therefore didn't hurt any animals. Again, cotton was went from west to east. Let's talk about some religions. The Silk Road helped religious ideas and philosophies migrate across the continent. So remember, they weren't traveling, they were migrating. They moved, and the ideas stayed in these new places. They stayed in the places they came from, but they also stayed in the new places also. So we have Taoism, which represents China from the west. We have Judaism, which spread as far east as China. We have Confucian philosophy that spread from China westward. We had, remember, if you need to, pause the video. We had Buddhism was brought from India over to China. That spread west to east. Islam spread from Arabia, both east and west. And Christianity was brought east by monks and explorers from Europe. Let's talk about bandits. So, the Silk Road traversed through two large deserts, the Gobi and the Taklamakan deserts. Rest stops where people would gather to eat and drink were common places for trades to happen also. We're going to do an activity tomorrow where we are pretending like we are on the Silk Road, and we can't just jump from country to country. We have to be at these rest stops. And while we're at the rest stops, we're going to trade, because that happened. And at those rest stops, bandits would steal the goods that were meant to be traded. Bandits would steal on land and on water. There was no completely safe route on the Silk Road. Y'all, the Silk Road was for realsies huge. Could you imagine going from Dunhuang, China, all the way to Rome and having nothing happen? It's unrealistic. So there was a lot of problems, a lot of trade, and just a lot of life happening along the Silk Road. So what you're going to do now is you are going to write a paragraph explaining what was important about the Silk Road. You can talk about trade, you can talk about religion, you can talk about how they traveled. But I want to know what you think was most important about the Silk Road. When you are doing this, you are using the racist strategy. Restate the question. So blank, and restate and answer the question. So blank was important about the Silk Road. Cite your evidence. Your evidence comes from the notes that you just took. Explain your evidence. Explain how this shows that this thing was important about the Silk Road. And then sum it all up. If you need help, my wonderful human beings, please contact me. Be good people. Make good choices. Bye.